Dan, you heard a conversation on sports radio this week that got me thinking. What you told me is they were discussing why the United States has struggled to consistently produce the same level of soccer talent as many of the world's top soccer nations. So, one of the arguments I think they made was that youth soccer in America has become more of a pay to play type system. If families can't afford club teams, travel, camps, and private coaching, some incredibly talented kids may never get the opportunity to fully develop or even be discovered. But the more I thought about it, Dan, the more I realized this isn't really a soccer conversation. It's more of a youth sports conversation. And football, which we cover a lot, may not be considered a traditional pay to play sport, but think about everything that's become part of the modern athlete's development: 7-on-7 teams, private position coaches, speed trainers, strength coaches, recruiting camps, showcases, nutrition programs, highlight videos, social media branding. None of those are required, but are they becoming expected, right? Have youth sports quietly become an arms race? Just like what we've talked about before on previous
Yep.
episodes.
Yeah.
And perhaps the biggest question of all, Dana, is are we identifying the best athletes or simply giving the biggest advantages to the athletes with the greatest access to resources? And I think when you and I talked about what you heard, that was one of the things you mentioned, Dan, is that not only, are the best athletes playing soccer, right? And the reason they're not is because it's a pay to play or something along those lines. But, and you compared that to football, which I think is a pretty good comparison because football has not quite gotten there, right? But all
They're
those things
trying. Said they're trying to get
they are
there.
trying. They are trying to get there for sure. And I think that's something which is worthwhile to discuss because, today we'll dive into those questions facing youth sports and where the advantages are right now as far as those who have the ability to take advantage of all of the resources that are out there. And maybe, does that leave some of the best athletes behind, right? Because they don't have the ability or the wherewithal to maybe take advantage of some of those things. But before we get started, Dan, I want to give a shout out to two listeners. All right.
Okay.
So you asked the question last week about New Glarus, Wisconsin, right? What was the question you asked?
What was it about New Glarus that would be important to me if they were coming to visit a Chicago area school?
Right. All right. So, and you asked for listeners to weigh in, right?
Yeah.
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 Anybody who had the answer. And I think you offered them a new car, didn't you?
Don't hold your breath.
Right.
How about
So
a can of
anyways,
spotted cow?
yeah. Instead of a new car, what we will give these two listeners who weighed in on this is a shout out on our episode. All right.
Sounds good. Yes.
So one is Alex, who is at 45 Montini on YouTube, and he got the correct answer, which is what?
Spotted Cow. That's where
Spotted
Spotted Cow
Cow.
Brewery is. Yeah. And that's whenever traveling a little bit in the Midwest, once you cross the state line into Wisconsin, one of the advantages that they have is that they have this great beer. Now they have a whole line of them, not just, and Spotted Cow is one of them, the New
Yeah.
Glarus Brewing Company. But yeah, so there's a ton of people that will drive just across the border just to get Spotted Cow.
Just
And
to
you
get
pay like
Spotted Cow.
$100 a case near the state line. And it gets a little cheaper as you get closer to New Glarus and up further into Wisconsin. They know you're not an Illinois person coming across the line to get it.
Right.
But if anyone ever comes in who's in Wisconsin, it's always like, hey, can you pick up a 6-pack of Spotted Cow for me?
Have you tried it? Is it good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
I think I like one of their other ones even better, but it started with Spotted Cow years ago, and it was really good. Yeah, it's a good beer. It's kind of a Wisconsin staple, and people who people who travel and enjoy a beer now and then will know the whole spotted cow in Wisconsin.
Yeah. All right, good. And one other listener commented and got the answer right, and that is Brian Giffen, and he commented or replied on Facebook. So Brian got it right as well. He said spotted cow, Dan.
Yep. Well, I had two former Bennett colleagues also text me and were like, "Come on, it's spotted cow." And so they knew right away. I don't know what that says about us and our old coaching staff, but they knew it right away.
Yeah, well, I had no idea. I mean, you know what my answer was, right? Do you
What
remember?
was it?
Cheese.
Yeah, right. Which makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if you
So
could bring down a brick of cheese with some spotted
with
cow
some
or some
spotted cow,
or
you're
cheese
good.
curds, cheese
Yeah.
curds from the cheese factory. Yes, the Mars Cheese Castle. Absolutely. We'll meet.
You know all. You know it all.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you visited all these places, right?
No, no, never.
No,
Yeah,
you would
yeah.
never go in.
No,
Yeah.
only yeah.
You like to abstain from beer and cheese. They're
Two of
not
my
two
least
of
favorite things.
right. Yeah. All right. So congratulations to Alex at 45 Montini on YouTube and Brian Giffen on Facebook for having the right answers. So
Awesome. That's
yeah.
great.
All right,
Yeah.
good. All right, so Dan, soccer started the conversation that we just
Yeah.
talked about. So explain a little bit, give a little background about what you heard and what kind of brought this to the forefront in your mind.
It's been a pretty hot topic the last couple of days since the US was beat by uh Belgium in the World Cup. And how, the problem was we don't have the players, we don't have the athletes, because it's a pay for play system. And I was thinking about that, and I know you and I have talked about that in the past with other sports. And even before we had the podcast, we both are the parents of travel players,
Mm-hmm.
and so we've experienced it. We've often thought, boy, how could some athletes be able to do this if they couldn't afford, everything that goes along with being part of a travel team? So I
Right.
was thinking of that, and then I kind of flipped it, Joe, because I also have been watching a little bit of the World Cup, and I saw this Erling Haaland from Norway. Have you
Yeah,
seen
I
this
saw that
guy?
picture too. I think you sent it to me as well. And for
Yeah.
sure. All right, go ahead.
So
Say what you were going to say.
So if he is in the US, if he grows up in Beverly, or if he grows up in LaGrange, or let's even say Naperville at 6'5", 215, right, is what he's listed at. He actually
Right.
looks a little
He
bigger than
looks
that to
bigger
me.
than that. Yeah.
Yeah. My contention was that I don't believe he sees a soccer field after the age of 10 if he grows up here. And
I
he's
think you're
he's
right. Yeah.
arguably one of the best players in the world. And but he because of how things are here, you know, the the likelihood of him playing soccer with that frame and the ease of football here versus the costs associated with playing travel soccer. I don't think the world ever gets to see him play soccer. I think he's a five technique, and I'd love to put him there right now, or a tight end, and
That's your coach in
yeah,
you, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the
Yeah.
other thing was, I was like, well, what would Colson Loveland, or pick a tight end in the NFL, defending that guy or being able to match up with that guy? What would that do for the U.S. team to have an athlete like that? But athletes that look like that in the U.S., majority is a bad word, but a lot of them are playing other sports, football or basketball,
Right.
or things that are just more popular here. But it also led me down this path of, taking the two together, the pay for play that's involved in soccer. And I looked it up, and elite soccer can be up to $50,000 a year that you could be
In
spending here.
here or in the other countries?
Here in the other
Yeah.
countries, all that development is paid for by professional
Clubs.
clubs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And they see it as investment in their teams, and which is a great way to think about it. We're here, and even kind of expanding it more, baseball's trying to do it right now. They outsource their development, and it falls on the pocketbooks of the parents. And so for that reason, you're losing a lot when it comes to soccer and some of these other sports. However, that loss is football's gain. I think
Right.
because if you think about how football is, and it's not free, and like you said in the intro, we're seeing more and more ways that people are trying to monetize football, and other countries would never do that. You could never start travel programs or doing things like they do in Europe from scratch because of just how expensive it would be. But here, because it's school based at the high school level, we are the benefactors of that because we get tremendous athletes that it doesn't necessarily have to do with economics.
Yeah. And we mentioned this, Dan, when we were talking about this episode, and we thought, is football different? Right? Or is it, right? Do you have to look a little bit deeper into football and see if it's really different? Yeah, there's not like this pay to play, football as you're growing up, in the middle school and, before you get to high school. But because football, I mean, it's more accessible, at least it seems that way, right? And high school teams provide the equipment. The schools got the coaches. Communities are big supporters of Friday night football, right? Or football, high school football in general. But the football landscape today, as you just kind of alluded to, is there are some aspects of it which are not necessarily pay to play, but is it pay for opportunity, right? You've got 7-on-7 clubs, you've got camps, you've got position coaches, speed training, nutrition coaches, recruiting showcases, highlight videos. All those things cost dollars, right? Cost money, but you know, is it more where football is becoming a pay to develop, right? Or a pay to get noticed versus a pay to just play?
Yeah, it's a great argument, and like I said, they're certainly trying to make it, make it a way to profit off of it. You're seeing people do that, and but those aren't necessarily barriers to entry, right? If you're a
Right.
stud but can't afford any of that stuff, you can still be a stud in football without having to pay for the specialist coach, without having to go to elite camps. You can still be a top level player. And
Yeah.
I think even if you start looking at that, you're with soccer, basketball, volleyball, some of the ones just off the top of my head, you still are not going to spend what you spend on those because you probably still will be paying for that development. You're still going to have that development cost plus the club fees, the travel, the hotels, all that.
Right.
You don't have to have that in football to be elite.
Yeah, but you have to admit, and I've looked at this too, is there are certain advantages that exist today that maybe didn't 20 years ago in football, right? So think about from a standpoint of think about two quarterbacks, Dan, with identical talent. One has private coaching, attends national camps, does 7-on-7, got strength training coach, he's got a nutrition coach. The other one only plays for his high school, right? So the question I have for you and is who do you think is more likely to get recruited in that scenario?
Same talent, Joe. I think still, and maybe this is hopeful of me, but I still think what they do under the lights on Friday night with someone trying to knock their block off, I think still will have the most weight out of that scenario. I always thought that there were schools that you could tell they could get the best trainers. They could have every advantage, but did they have the toughness? Did it show up on Friday night? Running around a camp 7-on-7 is not football. It
Yeah,
is not.
I know,
And
but
and neither are camps. And so I don't know. I still think the what the video says on Friday night and what people can see with their own eyes is going to play a now that kid who has the advantages of, let's say, financial means, maybe
mhm,
maybe he gets his video notice more. Maybe he has more eyes looking at
right.
him
Yeah.
from that standpoint. So maybe there is some advantage there, but I still think that it might play out where you see equal activity for as far as recruiting.
Yeah, I'm not quite there, Dan, with that. I do think that opportunity becomes a competitive advantage, and it's just the way things work today, I think. And I love the thought too that some kid who is an outstanding talented player, and he plays on Friday nights, and has the stats and all of that, based on what's going on right now from a recruiting standpoint. I just feel like they're probably, yeah, they're going to get noticed, but we know what the college coaches do. They like to go to the different camps and different recruiting camps, and they look at the videos of or the highlight clips, as well as some of the strength training stuff that the kids are doing. So, I do feel like there's, for kids who have that kind of opportunity, that they may have a slight competitive advantage, not on the football field, but when it comes to recruiting. Yeah, and getting
Yeah,
noticed. Yeah.
yeah, and all that stuff that you said, the camps. Let's talk about that specifically. Might prompt a coach to look at a player's video.
Right.
Whereas,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Mhm.
but I still think football is such that it's going to always be full game tape driven, so
Mhm.
they're going to want to see that might prompt it. But yeah, so I get what you're saying. There might generate more eyes, which should give that player a better advantage, or more of an advantage when it comes to recruiting looks.
Right.
So I do understand what you're saying. I don't know that anyone is going to. I know kids get offered at camps all the time, but I don't think that happens until someone reviews a few games.
Yeah, you
So
think? I mean, I feel like the competition is so fierce right now for schools and the recruiting and getting certain players. I'm not talking about, I mean, the recruiting and the competition is fierce at the power four level, right? Obviously. But those kids, it's not quite the same as some maybe mid-level talent kid, a little bit better than that, going to some camp, just to make sure they get some kind of notice, and hopefully come out of that with some kind of offer, whatever level it might be at. Right.
yeah, I
Yeah.
I
So,
don't know if those services will. I don't know if they will elevate a player to a level that he doesn't belong at.
hmm,
I think that I certainly wouldn't wanna offer and have my job rest on just kind of blindly offering a kid from a camp,
yeah.
but so I don't know how often a kid gets elevated, because we've talked to kids who are like, productive players, really fast wide receivers or whatever it might be, excellent times, multi-sport athletes, but boy, they just kind of hit a ceiling. And it doesn't matter how many people they know, it doesn't matter what recruiting service they use, they hit a ceiling, and they probably end up, where they belong, at least to start. Now, there's
Yeah.
development that continues to happen in college, and you see that, and you see misses, because we see transfers from one level to another all the time now. It's become a big part of recruiting, especially for some schools that aren't your highest of the high level schools.
Right. Hmm.
They will recruit from the FCS and some of those other levels. But I think for the most part, kids end up where their level is going to be, regardless of training in that aspect.
Yeah. So, do you think that in these days, and we've seen this evolve, over the last decade, so do you think camps have become expected, and private coaching has become expected now for high school kids who are looking to play in college?
I think, yeah, if you well, we're talking football, right?
We're talking football. Yeah.
Yeah, I think quarterbacks, it's kind of, I think if a college coach meets a quarterback who's an outstanding quarterback, who isn't working with some sort of mentor or trainer, I think they'd be surprised.
Yeah.
You know,
I
does
think
that
so
answer
too.
that? Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah,
that
it
does.
does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they would say, you know, they might watch a kid or watch his highlight clips, right? Say he's a sophomore or a junior even. And, maybe they even visit him at his school. And I can see a coach saying, you got to get yourself with a good quarterbacks coach, right? Over the summer or, weekly. You gotta start seeing somebody. I can easily see that, right? I mean, they may see some kind of raw talent, but I feel like, from a college standpoint, they like to see players come in who are a little more polished than that, than just kind of pure raw talent, which maybe 20 years ago they were fine with. Like, yeah, we'll get them in here, we'll develop. Now they want them developed a little bit more. Yeah, maybe not quite, the level that they're going to develop them at. But I feel like I can hear a lot of recruiting coaches or coaches, college coaches saying, you got to get yourself in with a quarterback coach. You got to go to this offensive lineman camp and coach, in your off season that, and believe me, you'll be in a better position next year when we come back and see you again.
Yeah, that would not surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me too if college coaches have, even go further where they say, "You've gotta get with quarterback coach X, like
Yeah.
their guy," right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go see our guy, who they probably have a relationship with and, can almost keep tabs on a player through a third party quarterback coach. So,
Yeah.
wouldn't that wouldn't surprise me at all, Joe, wouldn't and, to recommend a coach, and if they've got 2 or 3 main coaches that they'd recommend in any given area. I bet these coaches have relationships with quarterback gurus all over the
Mm-hmm.
place. All
Yeah.
over the place.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So we know the proliferation, Dan, of club or 7-on-7 football, right? Do you think those 7-on-7 clubs or 7-on-7 football, whatever you want to call it, do you think that's improved football? And you've made comments about this before. When we've talked about this, you said, I think maybe the question at that time was, what's one of the biggest misconceptions or something that you see in high school football right now? And it was something, your answer was something along the lines of 7-on-7 is not a very good barometer of how good your team or your players are going to be who are doing that, right?
Yeah. I still
Yeah.
think that's the case. I
Hmm?
do think it's probably improved route running. It's probably improved, some of the ability for quarterbacks to read defenses. They
Mm-hmm.
probably are getting better at younger ages. It's allowing defenses maybe to be a little more complex in the defensive backfield, do some things that they didn't do, God, Joe, even 10 years ago. I think
Right.
I think that's probably improved, but you know, those big guys running right at you are certainly gonna change how you react as a quarterback, as a wide receiver, as a
True.
running back, as a defensive back. And so I think that little thing that's not that little of collision and high impact collision is a
Yeah.
game changer.
It is a game
And
changer.
yeah, and so that is where, the rubber meets the road a lot of times. And I think a lot of coaches will say that too.
Yeah, what is that Mike Tyson quote? Remember that? He said,
Yeah.
everybody's a tough guy or something like that until they get hit in the face or
Everyone's
hit
got
in
a
the mouth."
plan until they get hit in the
Right?
face. Yes.
Right. That
Yeah.
changes everything. It
Yeah,
does, for
when you
sure.
don't worry about that in 7 on 7, and
Mhm.
you as a wide receiver can go across the middle and not have to worry about a big safety, that can light you up. And
Right.
granted, a lot of that is kind of is diminished in today's game, especially in at the higher levels. I think
Yeah.
high school football is still they still allow some hitting, but I think even the fact that I might get hit is going to change perspective of a lot of players.
Yeah.
It's going to change how they
I
look
think so
too.
too. A and we've seen that. I mean, you coach for many years, and And sometimes you can just see it by watching the game. You're like, this guy runs a 4.40 and he can just fly. And that's great until he goes to catch a ball and somebody comes across and just, you know, takes his helmet off, right?
Right. Right.
That makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can fly, but I'm not sure, there is another aspect to it. So I agree with you. I think the 7-on-7 thing has been good for route running, quarterbacks and as far as timing is concerned, and your arm strength and throwing those particular passes and working on that, but the one thing which is, I don't know, it's probably fairly unique to football, is you've gotta be able to do that with some guy who's 6'5", 270 pounds bearing down on you and wants to, take your head off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes
there's
it
still a
different
level of
for sure.
toughness. Yeah, it's why football is it's one of the reasons why I love it and people love it, is that there's that element of toughness with it, and can you perform with that pressure, and where it's hit or be hit, can you do it at those moments? So
Yeah.
we both recognize that, Joe, when we watch film and talk about these games. It's like, you might love some, I'm gonna pick Jack Elliott. Maybe the best player, all around player we've maybe we'd agree on that we've
Yeah.
seen during our
He's
time
very
on the
good.
podcast.
So
But
good. Yeah.
what made him that next level was an element of toughness
Yeah.
that he had. And that's what elevated him from a really good quarterback to, man, this kid is special.
Yes.
And maybe it's just special on the high school field, but whatever it was special, and you could see the toughness during a game. You could just see it,
Mhm.
and the will.
Yeah, will. That was a word I was gonna say, Dan, and you just said it for me, is that not only was it he was obviously a very talented player, right? Probably not the most talented quarterback, right? But he had that toughness about him and that will to win and the will to complete each and every play, to the utmost of his ability, which you don't see in a lot of players. And that in football, I think that's somewhat unique, just because of the physical aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons, I'm going to bring it to today's league, right? Talk about some current players. Izzy Abrams, I think, has that and has a chance to eclipse, Jack Elliott as maybe the best player we've seen, because he's got an element of toughness about him. You know, Jake Thies, one of
Jake
the
Thies.
reasons you like watching him play, and he plays on both sides of the ball, and you can see the toughness. So there's something that football people and fans like about being able to see that. And they can see through when someone doesn't have it as well.
Right. Yeah, people who watch football and have watched football for a while, and I think can see that or can sense it. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you can just kind of sense it in the way a player plays out on the field when when there's the option or there's the ability that somebody's going to hit you really hard. It just changes things in
Yeah.
my aspect, and
Yeah.
some players, get beyond that and are above that and are able to really kind of handle that, and those are the players I think that really get noticed in football, for sure.
Yeah, it's certainly it would not surprise me, Joe, and we've maybe veered off what our original topic was, but if there's a box to check for toughness, maybe they call it mental toughness for some of these college recruiters,
Hmm.
does that show up on video? It'd be a great question to ask if that's just something they feel, or if it's literally something they track that they can see on video.
Yeah. So, do you think there is a like development gap? Say for example, you've got two athletes. They may start off, they're equally talented, right? One receives better coaching, better competition, better training, better exposure. The other doesn't, right? So, does the talent change or does the development change?
Well, the development changes, but I don't know if the data supports that those players that specialize Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
gonna call that specialization. I don't know if the data supports that those players are better when they're 18 than players who didn't have that development, played multiple sports, were going from one to another. So I think the data might be flipped on that,
Yeah.
actually, that the kids who played multiple sports end up being better, not because they specialized, but because they didn't.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't know that the data backs up this specialization or focus on one sport. I think there's data also that says that if you do that, if you are a kid who's preparing like that year round, you've got greater chance of injury, you've got a way greater chance of burnout, that you're just like done. And we both have seen that. And it's in softball, where our kids played, but we both have seen that, like good players that are like, I am done. They reach a point. It's typically like that at that age, that sophomore, junior year in high school
Yeah.
where they're like, I'm done with this.
But
And the pushback happens.
yeah, but specialization is the trend right now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you're looking at specializations versus multi-sport athletes, it's got to be 75-25.
You think
And
so?
I do. I mean, think about all of these football players that we follow every season. Not sure. I mean, how many of them are doing anything else? And not many. Some are wrestlers, some are track, a couple play basketball as well. But I would say that's got to be maybe 25%.
Yeah, we
I
certainly
think
don't hear about it. So we
no.
try and highlight it too. We've highlighted some baseball players too, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think
Yeah.
I think that football baseball combo that was pretty strong back when we played, 100 years
Yeah.
ago.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think that has gone away, and I think football's losing some of those, I guess, matchups, right? You've got the baseball player that will choose baseball, and no matter how much you say, be a multi-sport athlete, continue to play football. It has benefits you can't measure. And God, if I've heard that once, I've heard it 1,000 times. That
Mm-hmm.
coaches, players, athletes will say, "Oh, we love that he was a football player too."
Right.
And or we love that he was a baseball player, or this, you know, Rock Chalowski is going to likely be the number one draft pick Saturday for baseball,
For the
high
White
school quarter
Sox.
for the
Woo!
White Sox.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
All right.
Yeah, that he was a stud quarterback. Probably could have played college football, and
Mm-hmm.
and evaluators really like that fact. So
Yeah, I think so.
I think specialization is happening, and you're right. I don't know that it's the best thing for the players.
Yeah, I think so too. And we've had this discussion around a variety of different topics, right?
Yeah.
How much things have changed. And, you know, we hate to see some of the changes, but they're inevitable and we're not going back.
Yeah.
And we've also talked about how the whole we've called it the kind of professionalization of youth sports, right? High school sports and youth sports, and like it's becoming too professional. Like I sent you a text the other day. I was reading about a player who is in the Chicago Catholic League who just transferred, right? And he's going to Texas, which is fine. That's all. That's
Yeah.
all well and good, right? Maybe a good opportunity. Maybe his family moved there or whatever. But as I dug a little bit deeper, so I saw in his like profile somewhere or information about him that he was an All American. I was like, All American. This guy's he's only going to be a sophomore. How could he be an All American already? He was a middle school All American and played in the All American game in Texas somewhere where it's a national All American team for football for middle school players. I mean, if that's not something,
Yeah.
and
What's the answer to every
some
question, Joe?
oh my God,
The
yes,
answer to every
follow the
question is
money.
money. Yes. Yes.
Yes, I agree with you, right, but I just thought that is just so ridiculous, that we're saying we're an All-American, but you're a middle school All-American, right? Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so everything's becoming an industry, right? even down to youth sports,
For
middle
sure.
school. Yeah. 14-year-olds have got their own brands or they're developing their own brands already, and like you just said, follow the money, Dan. And I think, you know, just with the proliferation of NIL, that's driving everything a little bit earlier and earlier, right? Because everybody sees that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow at some point, right?
Yeah, and if you think that, now rather than just spending that money, if you truly think of it as not only an investment that maybe could get your son or daughter to college, but also could get them to college and make 50 grand a year,
Right.
while they're in college. Now, that's an investment. Hey, that's well worth it.
Well worth it.
I'm gonna put that in quotes, that's well worth it. And, so like you said, it's not going away. We both have fallen victim to it too. We both have done the travel thing and said,
We have.
well, yes, gosh, my 10-year-old needs strength and conditioning in the winter for 11U softball next year. It's like when
Yeah.
you think about it, it's like, oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just it takes a while, I think, for people to realize that, I'm not sure about this, right? And, but you still kind of dive in and do it, and it's a lot of money. It's
Yeah,
a
you think
lot
you're
of
behind
money.
if you don't. That's why you
Yes,
think,
you
oh
feel
my
like,
gosh.
you've got FOMO, right? Fear of
Yeah.
missing out on something
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right, so I've got an interesting thing for you, Dan. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, right, regarding our topic here on pay to play and what's really worth paying for. All right, so I'm going to go down a list here, and I want you to give me a yes, no, or depends. Right. So, what's really worth paying for? 7-on-7
No.
quarterback coach.
Yes.
Yes, I agree with that too. The first one, I agree with your first one too. Lineman coach?
Yes. Can I put a qualifier on that?
Yeah, it depends.
All
That's
right.
one of your
It
options, and you
depends.
can.
It
All right,
depends.
on
Yep.
what?
Um, I always thought that linemen came in the least prepared.
Right?
I think they were the least prepared athlete in high school if across every sport
Yeah.
was offensive linemen. I felt like they were the least prepared. And I always thought if anyone needs a camp, it's linemen. If you project to be, 5'10", 215,
You're
don't
not a
waste your
lineman.
money. Well, you might be. It's or all right, let's
Where?
say if you're 5'10", 235,
All right,
you're
two
more
thirty five,
meatballish,
maybe. Yeah,
right? So
meatballish. Yeah.
then I don't think you need to do it. I think, because I think I've complained to you about this before back in the day that
Mm-hmm.
we got these big kids that come in and you are really starting from ground zero as an offensive
Yeah.
line coach. It is like
Yes.
'cause it's so different. So yes, it depends there.
So you're saying lineman coach middle school before they get to high school is a yes.
Depends.
Depend. Oh, right. It depends.
Yes.
All right. It depends on their talent and size.
Yes, and their
Okay.
want to. Don't
Yeah.
force a big kid to do it if he wants to play the tuba. And that's where his
If he
passion
wants to be
lies.
in the marching band, play the tuba, that's fine. Yes.
Yes, if he wants to be, don't force him because he's big just
Yeah.
to go to a lineman camp because you think it's gonna make him a lineman because you gotta have some toughness there.
All right. What about national camps?
National camps, no,
No. Okay.
no,
Local? Local camps?
depends.
Depends. All right. Yeah, I would say I was kind of a no to both of those, but yeah. All right. I'll stick with that. What about a speed coach? I'm saying yes to this. If you've got somebody who's shown some speed and you want to get every last tenth or hundredth of a second out of them, I'm saying yes to speed coach.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with it depends.
All right. What if he's fast or not, or what?
Joe, we've coached guys that were
We're
like, "Look how
really fast,
fast he
right?
is," and we
Yeah.
tried to do anything else with them, and it was a disaster.
Okay. All
Speed
right.
coach or not.
Yeah. What about strength? Strength coach?
Nah,
No,
no.
just lift. Here's 4 lifts I want you to do, and
Yes.
with as much weight as you can possibly put on the bar, right? You
Exactly,
don't need a
yes.
coach. All right,
You
I
don't need
agree
a
with that
coach.
too. How about recruiting services, Dan?
Hell no. Can I
Hell
say hell
no is
no?
right. It's a
Yeah.
money grab, right?
Yep.
I think so too. How about highlight videos?
Yeah, I think there's probably software it's probably 90 gets you 90% there now.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I do think I remember one time you telling me or someone saying, maybe it was Coach Quinn when we had him on,
Uh-huh.
saying, if you send a highlight video, make sure your best plays are in the first 5. Because if they're not, I'm gonna turn it
Good
off.
point.
You're
Yeah.
not building a
Yes.
story, you're not telling a
Mhm.
narrative that's gonna have a peak and you wanna cut it to crescendo. You wanna hit a coach with your best play. So,
Yeah.
someone to give a little guidance on that probably I wouldn't pay too much for it.
No. What about hiring somebody to help with your social media and branding and that kind of thing? Absolutely not.
Just don't be a dope.
You are such a curmudgeon.
Hey, here you go. Don't be a dope.
Don't be a
50
dope.
bucks.
Yeah. All right. So I got a couple more for you.
All right.
These are kind of rapid fire, right?
Do you
I
have
want to get
answers
your
for him
take on.
too?
Yeah. No, not all of them. All right, but we talked
The
about some
easy
of
ones
this.
you got
Yeah,
answers for?
yeah. So some of this we've already answered, maybe. But best camp you've ever seen.
This is gonna take me way back.
All
I
right.
am def there was a camp when we were in high school called the Bishop Dooligan Camp. Did you
Okay.
go to that?
No, I did not. Yeah.
Wheaton North. I think Coach Jim Rixilius may have put it on, and it was full pads. So and
Full pads.
that's why
Nice.
it was such a good camp.
Yeah,
And, but I think it's long gone. Best
probably
camp.
is.
Yeah,
Full pads. You don't get
yes.
anybody showing up these days to full pad camps. No. Okay. Worst trend in youth sports.
I would say specialization.
All right. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good one. I think I would say that too. And not only that, but what we just talked about too, where, middle school national, tournaments and stuff like that. It's like, come on.
Yeah,
Right.
there how many I remember this even from coaching in softball and baseball. It's like, well, you can play in the World Series. And so kids would be saying, "We're going to the World Series next weekend." Really? And when you get into it, you're like, "Yeah, our team paid 2,500 bucks,
Right.
and so we're going to
We're
the
going
World
to a
Series."
World Series somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
One of 5,000
World
named World
Series.
Series in,
Right.
across the country. Yeah.
Yeah. And you already said specialize is bad. So I'm not going to ask that one. But what do you think's the most overrated recruiting tool these days?
We should have a quick answer, but I would say the service that says they're going to help you
Yes.
get noticed and get a scholarship.
I think that's what I would say too, because maybe back when we were playing, right, or after us, maybe 20 years ago, the recruiting services I feel like did fill kind of a niche, right? They were able to connect you with coaches and programs and that. Now you don't need that anymore. You can do it yourself on X or wherever else. Everybody can connect very easily these days,
Yeah.
and there's not this big mystery around when or should I reach out to a coach or send them a message. Everybody's just like, boom, I'm putting my stuff out there. I am DMing all these coaches, and I'm going from there. Right?
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact Remax Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com. Yeah, well, look at how many players we've seen in just kind of these previews that have kind of jumped out after we've watched a little video. And like that's someone I want to keep an eye on. Now, we don't do it as far as recruiting, we do it as far as how they're going to perform, in high school. But yeah, we certainly no one had to pay us to bring those players to us.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they want to, they certainly can pay us, but no one had to.
Yeah. They can. Right. All right. So you've coached a lot of football over the years, Dan. And, I want you to think back over every player you've coached over those years. All right. How many kids had the talent to play college football, but maybe never got there because they didn't have the same opportunities as maybe some of their teammates?
0.
Zero. So you feel like everybody who was worthy that you coached or should have been, noticed by colleges and been recruited, every one of them was, right?
On some level, yes, if
Yeah,
they wanted to. If your question would have been, every kid capable of playing college football, have they? The answer is no. There were several kids who could have played, but it was their choice.
their
They were
choice,
done
right?
they were done with it, yeah,
What
but I feel like
about,
every kid who's wanted to has.
what about level? Do you think there were some kids who maybe went on to play college football, right? Because they were good players, but in your mind could have played at a higher level if they had maybe had additional opportunities, maybe had, the kind of coaching we were talking about and going to different camps, anything like that? You don't have to name names, but, you know, any kids over the years?
0.
Zero. All right. 0 and 0. Okay. So, what I was trying to get at with that, Dan, is
Yeah, sorry.
and you helped me out a lot. I really appreciate
Yeah,
that. Thank you
sure.
so much. Yeah.
Nothing I can do, I can tee it up, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
So, talent, there's a ton of talent out there, right? Talent is everywhere, but I don't feel like opportunity is as well. And, if we are really serious about developing the next generation of athletes, maybe the question isn't whether camps or club sports or private coaching are good or bad. Maybe the real question is how we make sure every talented kid has the opportunity to reach their full potential, right? And whether that's with coaching or whether that's with, private coaching or going to camps and that. From my perspective, I really want to see every kid who has that talent really be able to reach their full potential. And somehow the teams, programs, schools, clubs, whatever, help them do that.
Can I change my answer?
Which answer? The zero one?
It's yeah, one of the zeros.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead,
I did
change it.
not see it in football, and I think every circumstance is different.
Hmm.
Where I coached at Bennett is different than if you coach at other places, right? In a lot of different ways,
Yeah.
right? So I won't, don't have to go into that. In softball, Joe, I felt like some of the players I coached had opportunities to play at a higher level. They played in
Okay.
college, but
Hmm.
I had a few that probably either could have played or could have played at a higher level. An opportunity or being noticed or getting out there in the right way maybe limited, their reach.
I agree with you on that. I
Yeah,
I can think of several, and I've got softball examples too, where,
right.
yeah. Okay.
And baseball, if we go back to Mike, your son, if we go back there were kids that we coached there together that we thought this
Hmm.
kid is a player. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, didn't have the reach. And some of it we don't know if it was their choice but we felt like, boy, if this person had a little guidance, they might be able to get someone.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with that. All right. So this is one of those conversations where there probably isn't a perfect answer. I mean, I think camps help athletes improve, private coaching can make players better, club teams create some really good competition. None of those things are inherently bad, in my opinion. But when you put all of those pieces together, you have to wonder whether we're creating a system where opportunity increasingly depends on resources. So we'd love to hear from you. Coaches, what have you seen over the years? Parents, how has youth sports changed for your family? Athletes, What opportunities helped you develop the most? And here's the question we'll leave everyone with. Has youth sports become an arms race? And if it has, how do we make sure every talented athlete still has a chance to reach their full potential? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments and on social media. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with another coach, parent, or sports fan. And until next time, this has been the Varsity Voices.